to the organizers, CIMP, for inviting me to a conference which is populated by policymakers, economists, and planners. I am a sociologist by training, might be slightly offbeat to the crowd, but I try my best to ensure that I play music where it is in sync with what we have started in the morning. With that caveat, I move into my discussion, which is, the topic is titled Engendering Development to Institutional Change, Lessons Learned from the JEEViKA initiative in Bihar. This topic of mine caters to that segment of Bihar's population which Professor Devakar actually outlined, that is the home makers and the students, and what can happen if we take care of that HR properly, and how do we do that? Now, it is in fact a story which is already known to all of us, that JEEViKA is one of the most successful initiatives that has been taken at the national level, and so I find it repetitive and redundant to discuss the facts and figures about what targets have JEEViKA achieved. Having said that, I do not demean the exercise that I've done, but just for the paucity of time, try to highlight upon two major findings that has come up from JEEViKA's initiatives. So there have been a plethora of papers that has been published in international journals on Kudumbashi in Kerala, JEEViKA in Bihar, and so on and so forth. But what was primarily of interest for me was to highlight findings of two key papers, one by an economist and one by an anthropologist and a planner. Now, obviously, given their training in the specific disciplines, they come out with two important findings. First, Upamanyu Datta brings out the argument that yes, this is an initiative that was created in 2006, where the state tried to focus upon those districts which were incidentally high in terms of poverty, high SC/ST population, adverse status of women, so on and so forth. But in 2016, by 2016, they had already covered the remaining districts of the state, and of course, there were improvements primarily on three frontiers in JEEViKA. Through JEEViKA, the self-help group initiative, people improved their debt portfolio, their asset creation, and their food security was better. So the point is that economically, of course, JEEViKA was a success story, having aberrations here and there, but overall, it was indeed a very successful exercise in terms of economic indicators. Paramita Sanyal and Vijayendra Rao and Suki Madhinder in their paper, however, take the story forward and get us into the qualitative side of such a move, where they find that JEEViKA's social impact was much more than substantially cheaper. And of course, these, Garib Didis have become Shaksham Didis. So this metaphor here is trying to say that you here have a cadre in the village, which is not technically the state cadre, which is not technically the brokers or the intermediaries. These are women who were by default not interested to be a part and parcel of any corruption bracket. They would be, because they are the ones who are starting the receiving end, and they would like to become the change makers. So the point is clear by these two major studies that yes, it is an economically viable initiative, and that it gave a certain kind of voice to women who hitherto had not yet been given voice. But for this presentation, therefore, I decided to zoom down upon a major initiative of JEEViKA. JEEViKA has many initiatives. Primarily in that initiative, what they try to do is that they try to give these soft-term loans, and they try to ask people to learn how to do banking, and they are given a graduation approach, and they go for enterprises, and of course the story ends there, where from nowhere they become entrepreneurs. But the point is that we have to see this JEEViKA story with the larger narrative that is also set in the development sector, and only then to make sense of the findings which I then discuss in my subsequent slide. One is that we need to understand that there was a time when a lot of discussion came about social capital, and it was told that the moment you were connected with the right people, you might make progress. But the question is that here the question of connection started reproducing old social hierarchies. So the older caste, the upper caste, the dominant caste in different areas, they started making space, and hence it was found that there is a limit to the concept of participation in social capital. And therefore, anthropologists Aradhana Gupta and Aradhana Sharma and Akhil Gupta came up with this concept concept that here is the era where we're talking about GONGOs or government organized, non-government organizations, and they're doing much of the work which a shadow state would have otherwise been doing. Now, with that idea, there is always a debate between us that whether the conditions have to be better or the capacities have to be better. And that's very simply put, Amar Desen. I mean, it is a much more complex argument which is beyond the remit of the discussion here. So I just try to think that the major idea, however, I try to draw here from Nancy Fraser's idea, from redistribution and recognition. And why I bring this idea, it will be evident in the data which I show in the subsequent slide. That one, so there is an economism argument which presumes that justice will prevail provided you take care of the condition, the maldistribution is taken care of. But the culturalism argument says that no, it is already rooted in the cultural order, so how much where you make the system, you get the system correct, attitudes needs to change. Now, we having keeping these in mind, I move to the what we do is here that we are academics and we are not into research projects as much as we would have liked to. So what I've done here is I've taken help of two of my students, JEEViKA, you just raise your hand here, JEEViKA and Rishabh, who have been my master's students in the past years, and we have, through our dissertations, we have looked into two major initiatives. One is the MIND program, that is the Mother Awareness Initiative, and another one is the SJY, or the Satat JEEViKA Varjan Yojana. Because it would be a paucity of time, I would only stick to the findings of the SJY so that I can then channelize the way forward that I prescribe as a sociologist to the initiative that we're all a part to. Now the first thing is that SJY as an initiative is interesting because here we are not talking about people who can have money to begin with. It's actually absolutely no money. You can see it. That the SJY is an initiative which tries to bring into its fold people who are from the SC/ST group, who are female-headed households. They are the household of trolley tappers, so here who have lost their livelihood in the liquor ban, and the households who have a monthly income of less than 300 rupees. Now, with such a vulnerable segment of the population that is targeted, what JEEViKA thought, or building on its promise or its optimism that it had given for itself, they tried to have these four kinds of capacity building. So of course they had this, they call that LGF, SIF and LIF, which is Livelihood Gap Assistance Fund, Special Investment Fund, and the Livelihood Investment Fund. Giving these different, to keep it very simple, these are the different stages with which money is given and you can grow up your enterprises. But unlike others, sociologists have a penchant for not for data but for stories, and we make our boots dirty, and we went onto the field, and what we find is a bit of this. Now, number one which comes up is the most important argument that has to be seen, is that, for example, you start an enterprise and the rule book says that after 7 months of selection, you should be, till 7 months of selection, after 7 months of selection, you should be constantly given for 7 months, 1,000 rupees per month for the initiative. Now the problem is that this money does not reach in time, and suppose you have an initiative which has started in the first month and it needs some right money in the third month, the initiative completely fails. So the promise becomes the recipe for disaster, because you are planning in a certain way and the person who is already vulnerable is going on board and he or she is already into the debt trap. The second one is that the SIF grant, which is a 10,000 rupees which is provided to the beneficiary before starting the business for preparing a particular place for it is to repair their house or something, like, apart from, so it is taking, this fund is primarily created keeping in mind that you might have certain exigencies in your personal life or an infrastructural condition of livelihood which might affect your performance at work, and you want to take care of it. But the problem with these two models is that the SIF or even the livelihood assisted fund was that when the problem occurred, it was never reported. And this long narrative, which I think needs to be read out because it will bring out very clearly what happened, because there are many other narratives which we have from the hunt, because this study was done in Madhubani, and we pitched to the government of Bihar very soon that we want to do it across all the districts of Bihar, provided, and the data is published in Indian Journal of Human Development. And I'm just taking this narrative. So Sunita Jha is a 36-year-old woman who lives
the Sarisa village of Venipati Panchayat, and there are 6 members of the family, 4 children and a mother-in-law. Her husband had a cosmetic shop and his earning was good, but one day he died due to some critical illness. After his death, her family started to deteriorate day by day, and but Chanda's brother supported her and some of her neighbors did. So the point is that the the victims or the people who are deplorable do not wait for the state to come in. They do find their way of life. It is already there. However, she said that after she had expired, her children were about to leave the coaching center, and so he wanted upgradation of her livelihood, and that is why she became a party to the SJY initiative. So one day she was selected as a beneficiary of SJY in 2018, and she opened a cosmetic shop with a grant. The first 8 months of her business was excellent, and she was constantly earning around 5,000 per month. But later the business slumped because of the flood and thunder, her shop got damaged, and it was repaired by taking loans from the Radha Village Organization. Now this is important here, that the Radha Village Organization is SHG, which is beyond. So it is not, the plan does not say that you're supposed to lend loans to these people. It is the SIF which should come to the rescue. But rather the SIF coming to rescue, they have to go back to the village organization or the Radha. And then another problem that she faced was that although the program mandated that till 24 months of the program, proper guidance and support would be provided, however, it was not because the MRP or the Master Resource Person was overloaded. Now, keeping that in mind, I think that these are the major arguments which I made from our research work. Is that number one, is that JEEViKA's initiative just correctly prioritize on enhancing individual capabilities, but poverty is not merely about individuals can or cannot do, but about the social structural inequalities that limit individuals' opportunities. So the first thing that the government might or needs to do is that we need to build this excellent synergy between the triad, which I call the SHG, the Panchayat, and the Master Resource Person. Because of course the state is out there, it is no more with the BDO office, it is no more with the district. Of course it is in terms of grants, in terms of the rule book, but the action takes place with these staff, the SHGs, the Panchayats, and the MRPs. So there is a need to advocate for social policies that takes these so-called community mobilizers much more seriously. Now, one of the very interesting things that they do with community mobilizers or the Master Resource Persons is that whatever expenses you have on your job, you're supposed to get it reimbursed, like the way we do it. Now, just imagine here we're talking about Master Resource Persons or such people who are adequately educated, or over-educated for their jobs, and they are unemployed. And they already are running without money, and you expect them to spend on their own and do their job, which obviously they will not do. So then they will flunk, or they will start doing shoddy work. Now, one thing is that this reimbursement policy should not be applicable for at least master trainees or community mobilization who are not on regular payrolls of organizations. The second thing which is very important is this role of village organizations. Now, this village organizations at a certain time has become an Achilles heel. So there is so many village organizations in the village, we exactly do not know which village organization is growing and whether there is duplicity of these VOs being created. So I think that there can be more, there might be a mechanism where we start issuing certificates by the Sarpanch, say a saturation policy. So the village will be declared saturated if each of the eligible households takes membership in the SLG. In that case, we stop these duplication of VOs. So that's the key arguments that I have for our presentation today. I hope it will make some sense. Thank you.